Hello and welcome to the Authority of Love. I'm Greg Williams, and I am joined today by our co-host Addia Wuchner once again for Wednesdays for Women. Welcome, Addia.
Thank you. Honored to be here and blessed at the same
Honored
time.
and blessed to have
Honored
you.
and blessed.
And this is our first Wednesdays for Women for 2024. And by the way, yesterday kicked off the General Assembly long session, right?
Yes.
Tell our listeners a little bit more about that.
House and Senate gavelled in as they began, and on January the 2nd. And what we call the long session is the 60-day session, which really runs until April 15th.
Yes.
Because it takes a lot of time to get the work done.
And how do they end
days.
it? We talked about that before we started
When they gavel
today.
out is with sine die, and that should mean all that work has to be done by midnight on April 15th. There is a period of veto days where the governor has time to sign the law. They allow time to override those vetoes if necessary. We've seen that before. But precisely at midnight on April 15th, it needs to end.
And I've heard stories about clock
yes.
apparently
it was
tampered with.
Much more prevalent before I was in the General Assembly. But they would traditionally just stop. It wasn't electronic. They just stopped the clock and kept on working. They didn't have it all done. But there was a time when I was there that we kept on working. The Senate had sent some bills to the House, and we kept working. And I remember getting out of my seat and moving to the back of the room, and I'm like, Cinderella's left the ball. We're done. Yeah. And actually, what happened is any laws that were passed after midnight that year, of course, the Supreme Court of Kentucky ruled they were not lawful.
Well, good for them. We have to have a law and order.
Yes.
We are a republic.
Yes.
And even in our state. And you mentioned Cinderella. So you looked out the door and the carriage was a pumpkin again already, right?
Yes, and I was running and lost my shoe. No,
you were the princess? Okay, yeah. I got you, or soon to be. That's great. Okay, so speaking of that long session, it's a budget session. That entails a lot of things in and of itself, right?
It is. I mean, the budget that runs the state, and I say that, as women, we always think about budgeting our money. Being there, it's very complicated. I mean, you have a transportation budget, so every road, and dollars come in from the gasoline tax. They also come in from federal dollars. Then you have the budget that's going to run every aspect of state government, including education.
Some of it's way too much that it should be running, but I understand what you're saying, right? Yeah, we need to limit it more.
And how do we budget appropriately, right? Yes, with the tax dollars that you have, without raising taxes on individuals and allowing people to have more money in their pockets. I used to say, government doesn't get a seat in heaven for being charitable.
You can't be. As one person said, a government or an organization can't be charitable. Only a person can be charitable.
Exactly. And I used to say, if we have more money in our pockets, the taxpayers, then they, formed with the heart of Christ, can have that love and charity for others.
Or if they don't, they don't. But that's up to them.
Yes.
They get the freedom to do that, right?
Yes.
Exactly right. So what's on the front burner for Kentucky Right to Life?
Well, we, of course, during this interim period that we've been in, and especially during the political races that went on, every other commercial was dealing with demanding for extensions or exceptions to the current law. Yeah. So we've been monitoring
extremes, actually.
Yes,
but that's the way they
do
presented
not value life.
Right.
So we've been monitoring that. The child and the women get exploited and volleyed back and forth and actually used for political gain, often in political commercialization. So we've been monitoring that. Does the far left want to push for more? Of course they do. They've stated that in the paper. We're not for extending exceptions, but there's a reason. And so we look at that, but we're also looking at legislators, and in talking to them, they don't pre-file as they used to, but they're all working on legislation that I call it Love Them Both, that extends more benefits to women. What do we need to be doing for pregnant women or women that have survived rape and their children? Some dollars a couple of years ago, maternal child health benefits for those that can't afford health care. It would always be that the mom and the baby were taken care of until up to delivery. Then the baby had coverage, afterwards, but it was cut off for the mom. And so a couple of years ago, they extended that because the federal government was putting money in it. But can we do better?
Yeah.
And that's what we
and here's the thing I love about that. I love that we care, but that's the government supposedly showing compassion. I wish we would have more churches and organizations that would step out and do that for both.
Well,
and I think there are many that do that.
Yes,
don't get me wrong, there are some.
Programs Walking with Moms and in Need and pregnancy care centers and the Stork program. Just
many
so
churches
many programs.
do.
And they have small, quaint churches that have beautiful programs for embracing a mom who's expecting. And really, that's what it should be. But we've somehow things got churned around over the years, and they've expected government to do more and more and more.
Well, I heard a statement saying, I want to come back to your phrase, just to don't let me forget, love them both. But one of the things I heard years ago, and I thought it was powerful in a conference I was at, that when we as individuals or the church drop one of our swords of what God ordained us to take care of, the government usually is more than happy to pick that up and run with it. And that's what we see happening a lot.
In order to run with it, they have to have the funds to do it.
Yeah,
and where do the funds come from? Out of the pocket of the taxpayers.
Yeah, exactly.
And so how do we balance that? And I think, as we've said, government and organizations don't get a seat in heaven for being charitable.
Right.
But it's what we do, what the heart of people do, those loving acts of charity.
And if we would emphasize that, I think we do in many cases, but if we continue to do that and teach people what that kind of agape love is, we would have many more individuals within our churches and other groups and organizations that are showing that compassion. And then the government, I don't know if they ever will, because usually when they pick up a sword and get the money with it, they don't shrink. But we can pray. We can pray. You mentioned love them both.
Yes.
Tell us about the 23rd. We're 20 days away.
20 days away from Kentucky March for Life. And since Roe, there was always the marches in Washington.
Yes.
And they're still taking place. I'll be there because there's many issues that we're looking at, just like the federal funding of the military and, of course, paying for abortions and travel. So we're monitoring on the federal side. But with the overturning of Roe and the Dobbs decision, it brought this issue back to the states.
Yes.
And we want to make sure that the legislators who are in Frankfurt at this time, that the judges who are on our Supreme Court and our Court of Appeal, who are all situated in Frankfurt at this time of year, that they hear the voice of the people.
Yes.
That says, love them both, with every woman, for every child, and bringing everyone together.
So how are we
with the
doing
Kentucky
that?
March.
How are we doing
Kentucky
that?
March for Life.
Yes.
We'll do that with prayer beginning at 9:30 with a church service in Frankfurt. And we've got everything listed. A rally coming up 10:30 in the morning to 11:30, and then moving onto the Capitol.
Okay.
Where, again, their voices, great speakers, great music. And again, it's the voice of the people.
Where can they find out more about that?
There is a website already set up, kymarchforlife.org.
Okay.
There's also on our website, Kentucky Right to Life.
Yes.
You'll
Wonderful.
have information, Family
Yes.
Foundation. We're all in
That's
this
right.
together.
That's right. And we want to do that. We want to see thousands, if not tens of thousands, covering
Could
the
you
Capitol.
imagine?
Oh, it would be wonderful. And what an answer to prayer. We're asking the Lord to do that. So if
Yes.
you have a bus from Paducah or from Ashland or anywhere in between, come
We've
and
heard
join
of
us,
church
right?
vans putting buses
vans,
together.
right.
Yes.
Absolutely. Caravans. Let's do
Yes.
caravans. Let's do that. Let's continue with this thought on the legislation, this long session, because we know that liberals and generally Democrats, they're on that side. I won't put everybody in a box, but generally they're going to be pushing to try and have more exceptions for abortion. What is the feel you have right now generally
They've
with
made
that?
their issue.
Yeah,
I was just on a
right.
national call with National Right to Life, different national organizations that I work with, and across the country, they either blame abortion, for being the issue, and we blame so much on life. So they've been quite clear, Planned Parenthood, ACLU, that they want exceptions, more exceptions. But really it's not that, because as they had one quote on exceptions, they extended it. They want to restore abortion rights.
Same thing they did, Addia, the same thing they did with Roe v. Wade.
Yes.
They said, let's use the extremes, call them exceptions, and eventually where did we end up? Partial birth abortion.
Yes.
Where babies were partially delivered and then their brains were, it's sad. I don't want to go into it right now, but it was sad. So that's something we have to be aware of. But it sounds to me like that the conservative legislators in Kentucky at this point are going to stand strong. Is that a fair statement?
They've been having discussions. We've been discussing with them, to remain strong.
That's
but
great.
Also to be able to extend benefits where we need to be, and to have compassion, to realize that this is a very delicate, sexual assault is hideous and horrible.
And we need to deal with that issue first and foremost, right?
Yes, and the lack of jurisprudence with that issue, because there was an article, and I think the current governor quoted the minors who had required abortion some years ago. And I said, where are the litigation?
Yeah.
Where is the impunity of the law that if there's a case like that, it should have been reported and was those that
see, we toss out the core of it. We toss out the cause of it, and then we go after the effect because they can continue, let's be honest, to make money on it. That's the truth, Addia. That's what they do. And here's the other thing. You and I have talked about this before, but if you go back, I'll give you a great book, listeners. Check out Dr. Judith Reisman's Crimes and Consequences. Alfred Kinsey, the founder of modern day sex education, which is really a joke. It was no science at all. But one of the things he wanted to do was remove rape and sexual assault from our laws. Well,
And
now we're seeing why.
Pedophilia and
All of those.
Yes, yes.
Right. Now we're seeing why, because they literally want what I've called for decades now, 2 or 3 decades, they want free sex. They think it's a wonderful, healthy thing, and yet the results are devastating.
And we've always said that sex, intimacy comes with responsibility.
Right.
And if you
Toss that out,
toss the
right.
responsibility that comes along with having that relationship, which is a child.
Yeah. Having said that, here are some other things. Speak to any one of these that are going to be on the agenda in some way or another for the General Assembly. Life, we talked about.
Yes.
Education, where does a lot of this come from?
So important. I mean, the budget, of course, a large portion of the budget, besides the human services budget, then goes to education. And there is a responsibility of public education.
Yeah, and we're seeing many of the parental rights in today's education being tossed aside.
Yes.
Got to cover that. Gambling, oh, the devastation on marriages and families and young men and women.
Well, and I think we were talking about the commercials now.
Yeah.
Since
oh goodness,
I forgot what you call that. Gambling.
Sports gambling.
Sports gambling.
Yeah.
Yes, you know that we went from the commercials were on the elections, and then during the Medicaid enrollment, every other commercial was
insurance.
Yeah. And now it's every 15 minutes there's a sports gambling, and I don't even know what the terms mean. I was saying, what is that? What do they mean by that? What do what? And so I said to you, watching the ball game, everybody's watching. I mean, it's really sad.
Yes.
But you're watching the game, but everybody's watching their phone because apparently you can adjust your bet, depending on the player,
Yeah, exactly. And you made another comment to me saying, I would love, you're not is this fair? You're not a huge sports fan per se. You enjoy it.
I have a mom and a grandmother. I have grandsons.
Yes, there you go.
So I have my team, which, I've learned to love the Bengals, but my team was
good for you.
Colorado.
So okay.
My dad was Pittsburgh, so
okay.
and of course, I'm a Cats fan and
yes.
So, but all of that.
Cardinals, we have to say Cardinals fan too. Come on,
if you're
we got to include them all.
And I say we're a house divided. I went to U of L. My kids went to University of Kentucky. You love our state, and I think there's no state like ours when it comes to basketball and sports. We love our basketball.
Yeah.
But my kids laugh because usually I would be interrupting a play like, what do they do? And they're like, mom. So I kind of envision this with this sports gambling thing. That you're interrupting people on their phone trying to watch the game. I don't know. I don't know.
And what did you say when you would quit watching sports when they bought you?
Because we have T-shirts, Nana, whatever, Nana fan or whatever.
Or loves the Bengals or whatever.
Yeah, whatever these shirts are. We have mom fans and Nana fans and our shirts as a grandmother. But when they buy me a sports betting, my kids don't sports bet. When they bought me a sports betting shirt, I'm done.
Bet on the next throw.
Yes.
I'm done, Mom. Grandma bets on the next. No, we're not going there. That's good stuff. Well, also, I don't want to belabor it. We're about out of time. But we're going to have to deal with the issues and the fallout of marijuana. Every place it's come in as therapeutic or medicinal, it's turned to recreation. That it's just like abortion. That's the first step. They're going to keep pushing.
Well, and I even remember someone testifying in a committee a long time ago. He slipped up as he was testifying, and he said he was from Colorado and he was testifying in health and welfare, which I was chair of, and he's mentioned marijuana, and then he said
there's the Freudian slip, right?
So much to discuss. All these things impact families. As women, I mean, that's our heart, our families.
Yeah. Check out Kentucky Right to Life. There's also going to be issues with sex education, gender dysphoria in this assembly, so watch that. Check out Kentucky Right to Life, loveandlordship.com. Thank you for doing that. Thanks for your prayers. Thanks always to the Lord. Make it a great day, and God bless in Christ.